we need to be able to try some things. And if it fails, better fail early and learn from it. Stand up and continue. This is how the commercial sector, especially in the United States, was so successful in the last decade.
Hey, Space Watchers, and welcome to Space Café Radio here, live from the 41st Space Symposium in Colorado Springs. And my guest today is Major General Michael Traut, the commander of the German Space Command. And last time we spoke in Berlin, it was about vision and architecture. And today I want to talk execution, contract and industrial base and the hard choices ahead. How are you doing today?
Oh, absolutely excited. Great to be here again at the Space Symposium, seeing all the people preparing for the next exhibition, for multitudes of bilateral talks, and of course, seeing the dynamic between last year's Space Symposium and the upcoming one, which is going to be different from last year's, of course, because there's so much dynamic, and especially in Europe, perhaps even in Germany, is some dynamic ongoing, as we all know, and we will discuss that later on. And yes, my team and I are pretty much looking forward to learn to know new people, because more and more people joining into the space community, and to make some progress in concrete projects as well.
Absolutely. And I would like to talk with you about Germany and focus on that. Of course, Germany is not alone, so we have to put it into an international and geopolitical context. So let's start with a quick status across the board. SPOCK 1 is signed, SATCOM BW4 taking shape, and SARA finally is operational. So where do things stand today?
As we know, Germany has made a lot of progress in the last, say, half a year. If you look at our developments in the strategic political arena, starting with the minister's speech in September last year, the most famous 35 billion euros in the next 5 years, which is not only 35 billion euros, but it's more. Actually, it's about 45 billion euros, because there will be some other 10 billion euros coming from other government departments as well. And of course, a milestone, and I would really call it a milestone, is the German Space Safety and Security Strategy, first of its kind, and not only a glossy paper talking about political and strategic visions, but having 65 named missions and tasks for Germany, for the German Armed Forces, and of course for Space Command as well. So this is a major development where I would say Germany has finally realized that space is not a scientific hobby, but a strategic necessity. So that's number one. And at a very proper speed derived from the strategic overarching concept, there are already some projects going on. We've been working on some projects, of course, like SATCOM Stage 3. We haven't mentioned that so far. So that's already on a very final way to get produced and launched in due course. I expect a launch within the next 2.5 years of one of the SATCOM Stage 3 satellites, large GEO satellites. And we are pretty happy that the SARA satellites are all more or less online right now.
Are they commissioned already?
As far as I see it right now, they are still in their final pre-testing phase before becoming operational. But there are very many positive signs that this will happen in due course as well. And of course, there are so many projects, you mentioned it, like SPOCK 1, which has been taken under contract at a more or less light speed, if you can say. And of course, a huge project we call SATCOM Stage 4, which is really the largest project in space the German Armed Forces have ever attempted or have ever endeavored, which consists of a size of, let's say, about 180, 200, even more at later stages, several hundred satellites and a financial volume of 8 to 10 billion euros. So that's the biggest chunk of the 35 billion euros our Minister of Defense announced.
Why are there these vague statements about the number in SATCOM?
Well, if you look, we are at an early stage of conceptualizing SATCOM Stage 4. So it's going to be a more or less LEO-based, but multi-orbit. So it is not necessarily only LEO. It can be a multi-orbit constellation. And of course, since we are in a very early stage of conceptualizing, we actually try to find not the only one best solution. For a project of this size, there might be a number of good solutions matching each other, serving our concept, which we laid down in the strategy as well, of rolling fleets. So we are pretty much aware that we won't be able to launch a 400, 500 satellite constellation with exactly the same technology. So this will be an incremental process. And hence, many technical parameters and technical specifications need to be done still. So I can't say how many satellites SATCOM Stage 4 will actually include at the very end or at the full operational capability. But I can say that we will step into that capability, perhaps like others have done that in the past, saying our first generation of satellites looks like this, and the second generation looks like this. So there's a very large constellation named Starlink is doing exactly the same thing.
What will be the first operational tranche that you say, okay, now we are in a phase where we can use these 20, 50, 100 satellites, whatever it is. How many do you need for the first iteration?
It depends on what you want to achieve in the first tranche. Is it a limited capability in terms of bandwidth, or is it a limited capability in terms of global coverage? Is it a regional coverage? Is it a global coverage?
You are the operator?
Yes, of course. And that's not only my business, but the business of our cyber and information service as well, providing the service or using the service for the Bundeswehr. And we, Space Command, the Space Command's team, of course, responsible for the safety and security of the constellation, responsible of control of the constellation as well. We do have a say in that, but these processes are ongoing. And so the tender for the bid, which has gone out for SATCOM Stage 4, that's only one of the first steps in the whole big process.
Let's unwrap the status of the ongoing project. As we said before, SPOCK 1, for instance, you mentioned the Lightspeed procurement. It was a direct award, so no open tender. As far as I know, about 550 million over budget before the first satellites fly from ISI. So OHB, one of the companies that built Lupe, was shot out. So was speed worth this trade-off? It was the first time that the Bundeswehr also just procured a service.
Again, as an operator, I'm at the end of that chain. So the people who decided on doing that contract exactly that way it has been done, I have to say they must have had good reasons. And speed, of course, is a major factor.
Absolutely.
Since we are in this strategic situation, we need to prepare for a potential threat which might be able to attack NATO in 2029. So these are the outlines which have been given to us by our Minister of Defense and by our Chief of Defense. We need to be ready for war or to defend ourselves in 2029. That's only 3 years in the future. We can't afford to have long procurement processes for initial capabilities anymore. And since SPOCK is pretty much designed to support our eastern flank deterrence, namely our armored brigade in Lithuania, and as armored brigade in Lithuania is starting to be deployed there, they need a picture, and they need a picture now and not in 2 or 3 years' time.
How it sounds for me is that for SPOCK 1, you are not involved at all because it's a service acquired that goes then to the cyber information domain for the data analytics. Is that correct?
That's not quite correct. Of course, it's an industry solution. However, as soon as an industrial solution, as soon as we have somebody under contract providing a space-based service, Space Command comes into play because we are responsible, again, for the safety and security of the space-based services delivered to the Bundeswehr. This means that we even could be involved if a commercial service gets under threat or gets interfered with or gets threatened, explicitly threatened. So this would be the situation where we came into play, where we would come into play in the future. So I'm still hypothetical because this needs to be negotiated, of course, with the commercial provider. But we already had some questions and we are in consistent and constant contact to our many potential commercial providers who strive to provide some services to the German armed forces. And I have got the question of, would you protect us if an adversary declares us as a legitimate target for him? I would give them an answer. Of course, I need to give them an answer.
In the case of SPOCK 1, where at the moment Rheinmetall does not have their own satellites, using ISI images, you could even be called to support ISI directly.
I wouldn't exclude that possibility because, again, we are there to protect and defend space-based services which are given to the German armed forces.
SPOCK 2 is already in market sounding, so multi-sensors this time. What sensors beyond SAR are you interested in?
First of all, it's dependent on the tactical and the operational picture you want to create. Those systems are designed to support our armed forces and our military in the first place in the Eastern European or the NATO Eastern Flanks theater. Therefore, we need the spectrum of imagery intelligence or satellite-based imagery, be it by SAR or by electro-optical imagery. And of course, a second role comes into play as well, and that's SIGINT from space. And there are projects going on already, like Simon, the SIGINT project from space. We already run that project in a very early stage because there are already some commercial capabilities on the market providing potentially SIGINT from space, but we need to carefully look in those offers as well if those offers really fit our necessities and needs. And this process is already going on.
You didn't mention thermal intelligence or thermal imaging. Is that on your wish list as well or not at all?
There are so many potential sources. We need to differentiate a little bit between intelligence or imagery service or, let's say, reconnaissance service, and that would be the better word. Because you can do what I would call non-real-time intelligence, where you have time enough to create your basic knowledge about your operational environment. You take pictures, you assess those pictures, you create your libraries, your databases, your target folders and everything. So that runs offline as soon as it becomes time critical, what we would call a kill chain. It gets away from the intelligence bit into a concrete and specific tactical mission and task. For instance, there's one pretty big issue which we follow: missile defense, early warning and queuing. If you look at our theater, we have to take care of, that's a question of minutes or even seconds. So you need to have a relatively robust surveillance of the adversary's potential that you can pre-warn and queue your defensive systems in a question of minutes or even seconds. So that's a completely different story from taking pictures or setting up intelligence in order to create an operational non-real-time picture. And we look at all of those things as well. And especially the German Air and Space Force, who is responsible for missile defense and for ballistic missile defense and hypersonic vehicle defense for the German armed forces, for the whole of German armed forces, is pretty much looking into space-based early warning and queuing services as well.
It's interesting that you took out intelligence from the tactical level in your assessment.
Well, if you look at the common abbreviations in the international realm as well, you always say ISR. That's intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. So you have those three terms, those three words. They are not exactly the same. Intelligence is something different. Of course, an image or an information created in order to be part of a tactical kill chain can, of course, be a source of intelligence as well, and the other way around as well. However, the big thing, intelligence is more non-real time than surveillance and reconnaissance. I would try to differentiate it like this.
I would like to have a look at SATCOM Stage 4 again. We see at the moment one bid and no competition are at large. You spoke about the size of the project as the largest German space program in history. So that can become very fast a new monopoly. Who challenges the one consortium on price and delivery? If there's only one bidder, it's nothing new for the Bundeswehr to deal with, but it's new in the space sector.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I can say to that from an operator's perspective, since I'm not directly involved in the bidding and the contracting process, I can say that, again, SATCOM Stage 4 is not a monolithical project, not a big project. So it's going to be incremental anyway. And the industrial processes, of course, commercial processes are ongoing after the tender was set out by German Armed Forces Procurement Office. So there's, of course, a lot of communication going on between commercial companies and consortia forming itself and extending bids and To my mind, as an operator, I think that there will be some more movement in the market in order to create some different tranches. And going a little bit beyond my original mission as being in the Space Command, normally you don't put all your eggs in one basket. Monocultures and monopolies are sometimes not the best solution.
Yeah.
So a system gets more resilient if it consists of more diverse technology. It makes it more difficult to coordinate, of course. But on the other hand, a diverse constellation consisting of several different platforms and several different technologies is, to my mind, more resilient than a big, large constellation consisting of exactly the same technology.
Factor in time for me in that equation.
Oh, yes. Time is a factor, of course. And I think in a project like this, I envisage, again, I'm not directly involved in that process, but I envisage that there will be some tranches, some lots, which might be different in time. So we need something very early, very quickly, but this is not a full operational capability. And then I think it might be a good way to extend it. And last word for that, so there might be room for more than one consortium or more than one company providing that technology.
In our last conversations, you showed that you're a big fan or friend of the SDA approach here in the US.
Yes.
So you have standards set, and whoever can provide a solution within the standards can be called. Is that something that you see, again, from the distance where you are towards the procurement office, that will be executed? Or again, the known monolithic one big contract?
Again, from an operational point of view, I would welcome an SDA staggered, stepped, incremental approach. I would welcome that if it happened.
Yeah, that does not answer my question. Your wish is nicely taken, but...
Yeah, that's right. I can't tell if that's in the details of the contracts.
Okay, we wait and see.
Okay, let's do it that way.
While talking about SATCOM Stage 4, let's talk about interoperability and the entire conversation that we have at the moment with towards against IRIS, and something that pops up now on the European level or here, there, and then. What's your view on that?
Yeah, the view is exactly so. I don't see SATCOM Stage 4 against IRIS². So they are not two constellations working against or either or. So Germany is about to procure and provide a national military SATCOM broadband, very robust constellation, because we see the necessity to have that in our national responsibility in order to provide state-of-the-art broadband communication to all our military national users. IRIS² has a different focus. IRIS² is not only military. IRIS² is for secure official communications for European governments and European institutions. That's a different scope, a different focus. And of course, it's a question of capacity. We have to prepare for an Article 5 situation or for a war in Europe. This will put a huge demand on communications, on secure communications. Especially if you look at it from an Air and Space Force perspective, 5th-gen fighter airplanes, networked missile defense systems and all that needs a whole lot of communication and real-time communications, as we discussed a couple of minutes ago in terms of early warning and queuing. This will put a huge demand on satellite communication in total. IRIS² alone, our view, wouldn't be able to fulfill all that. Hence, we need a national solution. This does not mean that we only depend on our national military solution. Germany will continue to support IRIS², of course. And I would really appreciate if IRIS² and SATCOM Stage 4 could talk to each other.
Can you clarify Germany or the Bundeswehr?
I would say Germany supports. The Bundeswehr is right now in first priority going after a national military solution. However, in IRIS² there will always be a military component in there. Hence, we're going to be involved, of course.
You mentioned earlier the new strategy, space or security and defense strategy. And it says that Germany is an Anlehnungsstaat and partner to anyone. Will that be also applying to SATCOM Stage 4?
Well, can't tell at this stage. I can only say what's laid down in space safety and security strategy. The ambition Germany now has, after having realized space as being a strategic necessity for us, it's not only for military defense, it's for industrial and technological development as well. And of course, it tries to create or to support the creation of an industrial base for competitive space industry in Germany and in Europe. We think that when we follow those strategic lines of our strategy, that everything we do is not only meant to set up national capabilities, but in order to have something to offer to any kind of partner, be it a large partner like the United States, or be it a smaller partner like our neighboring countries in Europe. Everything we do will be, in general, open to a form of partnership. So this means, for instance, if we set up SATCOM Stage 4, at a certain stage, there might be the opportunity for partners to link into that constellation as well. How we do that technologically and contractually and in terms of organization, that needs to be discussed, of course, but our strategy actually says we build up robust national capabilities in order to become a very valuable and respected partner. If we follow that basic line and break it down to a big project like SATCOM Stage 4, I see SATCOM Stage 4 logically, consequently be open for a partnership as well.
Talking about the strategy, it states the European Space Command. Is that something that will be under your responsibility, and does it take shape already?
It's in fact explicitly stated that a European Space Component Command is to be set up in or by German Space Command. So we are starting to have some talks with our European partners how to set up a common European Space Component Command. This is in the first steps of discussion because we need to find an organizational form how to conduct common space operations, common European space operations, not necessarily European Union space operations. So it's very consciously mentioned European Space Component Command, which includes potentially all European countries. We have started some talks, some ideas, just to exchange the ideas with our partners. How would we commonly envisage something like this? How should it look like? We do have the headline, of course, and it's my team's and mine responsibility to bring that to bear. So we initiate some talks with our partners on that right now.
Let's come back to Germany and the industrial political situation. In March, a group of German commercial space companies with 1,500 employees, €1 billion in orders, 50-plus systems in orbit, sent a position paper to the Chancellor and 4 ministers. And it's called Germany's Space Moment, or Deutschland's Space Moment in German. The core message, the 35 billion is an ecosystem-shaping budget, and it was articulated that way as well. And if SATCOM Stage 4 and SPOCK 2 follow old pattern, Germany creates new monopolies instead of a resilient industrial base. Have you read it? And what's your first assessment before we dig into it?
First of all, I know that letter because it was an open letter, so it was accessible. I see that the governmental investment, which is now in the wake of our strategic movement, is not only meant to create military capabilities, but to support the creation of a sustainable or a self-sustaining, even better self-sustaining, competitive and multifaceted German and European space industry. That means that any kind of company which goes into that market should have a fair chance to prevail in that market. But again, that needs to be commercially in the good old shape of competition that needs to be sorted out. I'm personally a big fan of innovative potential. So I like innovation pretty much. We should create a very good climate for innovation. And we should, of course, support some ideas. And I think I've said a number of times that the time when we didn't have any money, but much time is over. And in former times, if you don't have any money, but a lot of time, you can't, or you tend to avoid any kind of risk. So this needs to change because now we do have money, we don't have time. Hence, we need to get into that culture, not trying to avoid any risk, but to manage risks. And this is something which would support an innovative potential or innovation much more than procurement processes we cultivated during the last 3 or 4 decades. And I see that those companies, that smaller companies came together and wrote that letter. I see huge innovative potential in those companies. And I would really appreciate if our government could support that. On the other hand, I'm a strong believer in commercial competition as well. So where's the balance between regulating a market, allowing new companies to get into the market, taking risk? Of course, something could fail, as we heard the quote at the very beginning of this interview, and to rely on the established large companies creating a monopoly. Monopolies I don't think that this should be the right way.
This letter makes 4 concrete proposals, but I think it's beyond this. We are just yelling and crying about the market conditions and blame others for not doing X, Y, Z. So they're very concrete examples. So let me put them one by one. So first, it's a 20% for space funding reserved in a direct procurement path for commercial space and SMEs. So not through prime subcontractor structures directly. Your view, is that realistic?
I actually can't say, because I have to say I don't know, because this is a question of industry policy, and that's not even only a question of Ministry of Defense. Actually, people from our Ministry of Economy, number one, industrial or shaping a high-tech, future-oriented industry in Germany. That's, I think, the mission of our Ministry of Economy. And secondly, our Ministry of Research, Technology and Space should be ready and able to answer that question.
But they can't tell you who you get into your contracts.
That's again the balance between a sound commercial competition where the best competitor prevails, who has the best idea, and of course, on the other hand, trying to support new companies and smaller companies to help them to get into the market. And again, that's a balance. That's not an either or. You need to find that sharp balance. And I actually can't tell. To my mind, it's $1 billion question to find the right balance between exactly that. We need to sort it out on a case-by-case basis.
But again, here, I asked it earlier in our conversation, factor in the time that we don't have, and that holds us back for doing it in a nice way, because the drivers are not there. I think this is the second point that they mentioned you fully align with, because it was more or less your word. Every strategic program starts with at least 3 vendors in parallel, including at least one commercial space company, multi-vendor, not mono structures. And you mentioned that, so check that.
I would say I would appreciate a diverse structure of large capabilities. And that means that we procure from different providers. But again, that's not my direct mission. That has to be sorted out in the procurement process.
And the third one is almost something that you mentioned, are the competitive tendering with KPI-based tranche selections. I spoke about that, and very much based on a US model that you, again, a year ago already praised in Germany. And the fourth is the serial production as a government goal. Rolling fleets that you said are short refresh cycles, more or less your own words from the last time.
Yeah, I have to say, I realized that this letter included lots of things we've been discussing for quite a while already. And the last fact, serious production, of course. That's something Europe and Germany and the industry, our space industry in Europe and Germany has to get into that industrial production for space. Not anymore manufacturing, but industrial serious production. That does not only bring down the cost, but that accelerates innovation cycles as well. And that's something we need to get into. And of course, it needs to be pushed and sparked in the first place by government money and government contracts. And I think that those 30 to 45 billion euros, which is a huge amount of money, if we do that properly, if we manage to invest that money properly, and of course, we use that governmental money to encourage private investors as well to invest some more in the emerging space industry in Europe, private venture capital. I see some potential to extend that.
That's exactly what is written there. That I think they claim that they can leverage any government or investment 1 to 10. What is not something from the textbooks, it's what they show day in, day out. When we see at the moment the amounts with that we see go into companies or what they do in their series, 50 million, 100 million, also in Europe, seems to be the new normal. So numbers we haven't seen ever before in the space sector.
I would absolutely welcome more private venture capital investment in our emerging space industry. And of course, into young companies who try to get into the market, trying to get into a serious production with new and innovative products.
I would like to hear your thoughts on how we can go into actions. You said, and I'm paraphrasing it closely, given the volatility on the other side of the Atlantic, we must procure independent capabilities fast. We need the broadest possible industrial base. SMEs and startups must play a role. I would welcome conditions in the tendering process ensuring these players participating at a defined share, including in the launcher segment. Strong words, but very generic. Can you be more specific? What does a defined share mean in numbers?
That's again a $1 billion question.
You talked about 40 billion before. So 1 billion is not.
Yes, of course. But on the other hand, I only can say these are the lines, the strategic lines we need to follow. Exactly how much and how many % of any investment needs to come from governmental sources or needs to come from commercial or venture capital sources. Again, it depends. That's nothing you can say in general. So there must be a good mixture, of course. And if we take the factor of time into account, that's something where it's again, I can't say that and I can't tell that in general because we see so many different projects and so many different ambitions. And of course, many startup companies getting into the risk and trying to already get a product into the market without having any governmental contracts yet. So they are 100% privately funded right now. So there's a full range of government participation or government leadership from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. So I can't tell that exactly. So where is the golden cut of governmental participation and private investment? I can't tell. Sorry.
It's always 42.
It's always 42. Absolutely.
Yeah. But are you talking to these companies directly?
We are talking to many companies, of course, and the whole structure of the Bundeswehr, because we are the operators. We do have the procurement office, we do have the German Armed Force Planning Office, we do have the different directorates in the Ministry of Defense. So they are all coming up into the space business more and more. And I pretty much appreciate seeing that right now at the Space Symposium over here, we come with the largest German delegation ever, consisting not only of a few people of German Space Command, but many more. And this is a clear sign that many other governmental and private institutions in Germany have realized that we are now in a strategic movement.
We are almost running out of time. I have two very short points to discuss. So the outlook, the pipeline, beyond SPOCK and SATCOM or Stage 4, Sarah success, or Simon you mentioned for space situation awareness, optical reconnaissance, counter space. Where are these concepts, studies, or contracts already?
There are so many things going on that would extend our time too much to mention every project. Space-based missile detection is top of the list for the German Air and Space Force. For us in Space Command is space domain awareness on top of the list, not only ground-based, so by ground-based sensors, they are already partly under contract, they are under construction even partly. Telescopes, laser rangers, together with our partner, the German Space Agency, of course. But space-based space surveillance is coming up as well. And then we are about to get a full range of counter-space capabilities. Ground to space, electronic warfare-based or laser-based, and of course space-based as well, as we are already in the process to build some prototypes for our inspector satellites, and we've been talking about that for a while already. So Gizmo is not only one satellite, it's a whole program. And it might end up in geostationary orbit with a large space tug, which can do things like the SJ-21, for instance.
Okay.
So these are the things we envisage in the upcoming years.
Final question. The position paper ends with Germany has the capabilities. Germany has the capital window. What we don't have is time. When will we see actually new German military space satellites from these programs in orbit? And is the industrial base today ready to deliver at speed that you need?
Last question first. I'm perfectly convinced that they can. We need to find the right balance for taking risks between government contracts and commercial endeavor and commercial entrepreneurship. Then that would create speed.
I take that. General Traut, thank you very much for this direct conversation. Also on the hard questions. Good luck to you and your team. And again, thank you for your service.
Thank you very much for investigating space and asking so hard questions.
With that, SpaceWatch out.
If you like these or other episodes of Space Café Radio, leave us a rating on your preferred podcast platform. It is the currency of today. And if you want to stay on the pulse of the space industry, please visit our website at www.SpaceWatch.Global and subscribe to our newsletters. And of course, don't forget to become a Space Watcher. I'm Torsten Kriening, publisher at SpaceWatch.Global, your independent perspective on space.